In this walkthrough, I'm going to show all the steps that are necessary in order to create a web service. Now, as I go through this, I'm not going to explain very much about all the little nuances involved in creating a web service. There will be literally dozens of videos that you'll be able to watch about each specific aspect of what I'm about to do. But what this is intended to do is provide a high-level overview of all the steps that are necessary from beginning to end in order to create the web service. And then as time goes on, you can study all the individual parts and everything that I did and get more complete explanation. So let's begin by creating a new project. And the new project dialog opens. I'm going to select Visual Basic Projects, ASP.NET Web Service, and I'm going to call this my Hello World Web Service. Select OK. And it'll take a few moments for Visual Studio.NET to create a Visual Basic version of a web service and all the files that are associated therein. And what we want our web service to do is something fairly simple. We're just going to take a string that's passed to the web service, concatenate it with Hello World, and then pass it back out to the consumer of the web service. So once my new project has been created, I'm going to first rename my web service. I've readjusted the viewing area so that you can see the drop-down box as I right-click the service1.asmx file to rename it, to give it a more friendly name like Hello World. And I'm going to click off of it to make that change complete. And the Solution Explorer refreshes at this point. And now I've set the viewing area back to its original position. And what I want to do now, because I like working with showing all files, the code behind files included, I'm going to select the hello world.asmx.vb and select the view code icon. And in the main area, I'm going to see the code area for this web service. I'm going to move the Solution Explorer over, and I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom. And instead of using the web service that's provided for us, the Hello World web service, I'm going to leave it commented out and create my own. Now, to do this, what I'm going to do is type in the following code. I'm going to add a web method attribute. And I'm going to add public function hello world, but mine is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to add a byval as my value as string, and then my web service is going to return a string. When I do this, notice that Visual Studio.NET adds the end function since I created the public function hello world, and it also tabs and indents in nicely for me. And here what I'm going to do is put hello world equals hello world, and then I'm going to concatenate the value that's passed into the web service. And there it is, except I misspelled world. And there we go. So now what we need to do, I'm going to save all the files. Then I'm going to build my project, because even though my ASMX file is an ASP.NET file that doesn't need to be compiled, the code behind does need to be compiled. So I'm going to select Build. And notice in the output window below that it says that the project succeeded in compiling. And so now what I want to do is revisit the Solution Explorer, find my file, right-click on Hello World, and select View in Browser. And what this is going to do is bring the test harness, the web service test page for the Hello World web service that I just created, and allow me to test it and make sure that it works. I'm going to close the output window and move the Solution Explorer over just a little bit as the test page loads into the main area. So here in the main area we see the web service help page that was dynamically generated specifically for the Hello web service that we created. Now the first thing to note is that it's still named Service 1 even though we renamed it. Because even though we renamed the file, the ASMX file, what we did not do was rename the class. And that's nothing to really worry about now. In a future video, we'll explain how to do this and what the ramifications are. Then also, the next thing I want you to notice is down here below, there is a warning regarding the default namespace for this web service. By default, it's set to tempuri.org. And what Microsoft suggests is that you change this specific to your own domain to make this web service reside at a unique endpoint. And we're not going to worry about this for right now. For our purposes, we can still test the web service without setting these things. But again, in a future video, what you'll be able to see is how to change this default namespace to your own namespace specific to your organization. Now, really what we're specifically interested in right now are the two links that are near the top portion of the test page. We can click on this to see the service description, or we can click on this link to actually test the web service. The first thing I want to do is just to get an idea of what the service description looks like. So we're going to click on the service description link, and what will happen is the WSDL for this web service will be generated and will be shown to us in the main area. Now, WSDL is a large topic. It's a specification that defines how to discover a web service, and without getting into too much detail, it basically describes every single thing about our web service, including all of the ways that you can call it and the data types and the input and output parameters. So again, there's quite a bit here, as you can see as we scroll down, all represented in XML, but we're not going to get too involved with that at the moment. Just know that it's there for now. I'm going to navigate back in the web browser that is loaded into the main area, and we're back at the main page. I'm going to click the Hello World, and this time it'll allow us to test this page. And again, we're going to dive into the testing portion of this at some future time, but it gives you descriptions on how to call it via SOAP, how to call the web service using HTTP GET, and finally how to call it using HTTP POST. But what we'll do is use this little test area right here in order to test our web service. Now, something should look very familiar to you. What I was able to do through reflection is to find that we have an input parameter called smyValue. And so we can input a value here, and I'm going to put learn visualstudio.net. And then I'm going to select the invoke button. And what will happen is another window, web window, will open in the main area with the results of our web service. Basically, we sent in learnvisualstudio.net, and our web service appended hello world, comma, and learnvisualstudio.net, our input parameter. Now, if you have a keen eye, you'll notice that the test harness will not return a SOAP message. What's returned is XML, but it's returned via HTTP GET. And so this is a great way to test very simple web services. If you have a more complex web service that you need to pass objects to or data sets or whatever the case might be, then you're not going to be able to use this test harness. But at any rate, this concludes how to create the web service. Now in the next walkthrough, in video 3102, you're going to learn how to consume this web service from an ASP.NET web form and how to use this string, hello world, learn visualstudio.net or whatever, and how to display that on a web form. And again, we just want to stress that this video was intended to show you all the steps that are necessary in order to create a web service. But you're probably going to have a ton of questions. There were things that I did very fast that you didn't understand, and that was intentional because, again, other videos within the 3100 series will explain all the little nuances about creating web services, and we'll explore them thoroughly. But at any rate, for the purposes of a high-level overview, we are finished at this time, and thank you for watching.